Okay, one of the biggest concerns that I hear from people when it comes to lightweight or ultralight backpacking is how expensive the gear can be. And it's very true that some of the gear is more expensive than your typical backpacking or even car camping equipment. The stuff I use, my hammock and my tarp and the quilts, that all comes from these little cottage shops, these little one-man band operations where they sew them by hand and make them one at a time as you custom order them. It can be a little expensive, but a lot of the equipment that we use in lightweight backpacking is significantly cheaper than the stuff you buy at a store. Mainly because lightweight backpackers make a lot of their own stuff, and they make their stuff out of garbage, in fact. And I'll show you some of those things, but today I want to talk about stoves, and specifically lightweight backpacking alcohol stoves. I've made several stoves myself that cost me about anywhere between 50 cents to $3 at the most to make. And if you think of a little white gas or propane or butane stove that you get at a store, you can pay $50 to $100 for one of those. And they're significantly heavier. And they have a bunch of parts that could fail. Whereas an alcohol stove, basically just one piece and some denatured alcohol and you're done. It's really kind of foolproof. So let's look at some different stoves and talk about why they are, in my opinion, better for backpacking.
All right, let's talk stoves. Here are my hands, and a 1 and a 2. The first alcohol stove that I got was the classic Trangia stove. If you're not familiar with these, they are just a basic stove that takes denatured alcohol. They come with a simmer ring, which allows you to adjust the flame. I've never used it. Actually, I just used this to snuff out the actual flame if I put too much alcohol in there. And then it also comes with a lid that has a O-ring inside, so that if you do have more alcohol in there than you need, you just snuff it out, boop, and then you can close the lid on top, seal it in there, and you've got more ready for the next time. This stove works really well. It actually comes with a cool stand, pot stand, which just assembles together like so. There we go. Sit it down, stick your stove in there, and pot just sits on top there. This stove is light-ish, but it is 3.88 ounces or 110 grams for the stove. Just the stove with the sim ring. That does not include the pot stand. Just all of this combined, that's how much it weighs. The next stove I got, in an attempt to go a little bit lighter, is the Solite stove. It was actually designed by one of my dad's neighbors, but you can buy this online. It is a stainless steel water bottle that the bottom and the top have been cut off. The top gets flipped upside down, shoved in there. You can see the threading from the top, and then a bunch of holes drilled. This stove works very well.
Just don't burn yourself with that huge open flame. That's a big flame.
The issue that I have with this stove is that it requires priming, which means you put the fuel in, you light it, and it takes about a minute before the flame plumes out of these holes. And then you set your pot directly on top. It's a good stove. It's one of my favorite stoves, especially if I use a larger pot or a kettle. But it's 46 grams, 1.62 ounces. There are lighter options than this as well. And at this point, I decided to experiment to make some of my own stoves. The first one I made is this one. It is called the Nivea stove. You can find a video how to make it on YouTube. I painted mine red, but it's basically a Nivea lotion tin, and you take the lotion out and you weld in 3 screws with JB Weld, so epoxy them in there, and then you use a material called carbon felt, which is fireproof felt-like material, and then you add these little screws. I can't remember what they're called, but it's like basically a pot stand. So it works like this: twist, 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 and there you go. And you know, you just set your pot directly on top of those. What's great about this stove is there is no priming. You basically put your fuel in here, about an ounce, light it, and it's just instantly ready to go. Put your pot on top. It's stable enough, but it's not like bulletproof. I mean, if you know, bumped into it, or you know, a stiff breeze might actually knock your pot over, which has happened before. This is where Braden spilled his water. This is where my dad spilled his water again.
Almost twice.
But I do like this one. My dad and my brother and my nephew still use the stoves that I made for them. Those are the ones they use. They find them very efficient. This one is 0.74, or you know, 3/4 of an ounce, or 22 grams for this stove, including the lid. The next stove I made was this one. This is actually the lightest stove that I have, at 7 grams, or 1/4 of an ounce. Yeah, it's my stove. And the reason why my name's on it is because we made these as a Boy Scout project. So my son and all the other scouts, we made these together. This is a Fancee Feest cat food can. It's 59 cents at Walmart. You empty it out, you clean it out, you punch holes in it like this. I actually got this recipe from Andrew Skirka and his video, which I'll link below. And that's it. You put the alcohol in, put your pot on top, or you light it, wait for it to heat up a little, put your pot on top. This one also requires some priming, so you have to wait you know, a few seconds for the flames to come out the holes. Andrew Skirka used this on all of his trips. It's super light. It's pretty durable. I mean, it's made of, you know, aluminum or whatever, so it can get squished. But if you put it in your cook kit, protect it pretty well. This is a great little stove. Because it does take some priming, I don't really use this. I've burned it a few times. The scouts use them. They use them pretty well, but I don't really use this stove myself. The last one that I made on my own is the Diablo stove, which is what I call it because it was made from an Underwood deviled ham can. This one weighs a little bit more at 0.78 ounces or 23 grams. It's a little bit more dense and robust can. It's a little taller. It still works pretty good. It'll boil water. Works the same as a cat food stove. I would probably go with the cat food stove instead because it is lighter. And but this is still a great little stove. I've only burned it in the house. I actually haven't taken it out in the field yet. But it's a good stove. If you want to know how to make one of these, I made a video about it, which I don't know why you haven't watched yet, but it'll be linked below so you can watch that one too. And finally, here's the stove that I use now the most. I've been using it all summer, and I think this stove is fantastic. This is the Fancee Feest stove made by Zelf over at Wood Gas Stoves. It's a Fancee Feest can, some wicking material, and aluminum, very thin, light pot stand. It's not my lightest stove, but it's still pretty light at 24 grams. But I love this stove. It doesn't take any priming. You put an ounce of fuel in there. You can either light it straight in there or you can light the wick. It lights up immediately. It includes the pot stand. It burns very efficiently. I've never had this not bring water to boil with just an ounce of fuel. It's pretty quick. This is my go-to stove right now. My favorite of all the stoves. It's fun to make stoves. It's a cheap project because, you know, it costs $1 to make a stove, but I really like this one. This one's great. This one wasn't as cheap as making your own. It was about $15, but $15 for a great efficient stove is significantly cheaper than buying like a Jetboil or a Whisper Light or a propane white gas type stove. So this stove is great. I love this one. Like I said, I've been using it all summer. I've used it in different conditions. I've used it at the top of 11,000 foot peak on Timpanogos. I've used it in California near the ocean. It's worked great everywhere, and this has become an essential part of my cook kit and my system. There's a link below if you want to check this one out too. Anyway, this is the one that I prefer. Lastly, if we're going to talk about alcohol stoves, we need to talk about windscreens. You should not use an alcohol stove without a windscreen. And this one is made of titanium. I bought some titanium sheeting and I made this one myself. You don't have to have one out of titanium. Obviously, you can use just foil, or I use the oven liner pans I've used in the past, but I saw a video where someone made one out of titanium, thought it was pretty cool, so I made this one. Holds its shape really well. It rolls up and fits inside my pot. This one's custom made specifically for the pot I use and this stove. And but you have to have a windscreen because these stoves will lose all efficiency if even a slight breeze blows through. You'll go through fuel super fast. So always have a windscreen. They're super easy and cheap to make, unless you make one out of titanium. They're a little more expensive, but I want to go fancy and have a fun project. Anyway, that's it. Like I said, this is a great way of saving some money and saving some weight, is purchasing or making your own alcohol stove. And they're very effective. If all you're doing is boiling water, if all you're doing is making little mountain house or backpacker's pantry meals, these are the best stoves to get, in this guy's opinion. So, love you. Bye-bye.